I first heard about Defenders of Oasis randomly when scrolling through lists of RPGs on the old internet. Apparently, this 1992 RPG got good reviews upon release, and since I'd never played a Game Gear game before, I thought, what the hell, let's give it a go. Boy, I'm glad I did, and not only because I had a blast streaming it. Defenders of Oasis, based on Zoroastrian mythology and set in a fictional Arabian-themed world, is an absolute gem, and there's little I don't like about it. More on the negatives in a bit, but first, consider leaving a like and subscribing for weekly videos on RPGs. I've got a lot of good stuff coming up and would appreciate your support. Anyway, what impresses me most about Defenders is how well balanced it is. For nearly the whole adventure, you have no way of restoring MP to your genie character, the only unit who can cast spells and heal your party other than resting in town. That sounds grueling, but the dungeon design accounts for it perfectly. As I got toward the end of the first dungeon, for example, I worried I might need to head back to town to heal up and restock since I'd run out of healing items and my genie's MP was almost gone. But nope, I barely scraped through, and rather than making me trek back through the dungeon after reaching the end, like many old RPGs love to do, instead, I unlocked a warp spell for my genie and automatically traveled to the next town. That's badass, especially for a handheld game where convenience is valuable. Speaking of convenience, Defenders of Oasis has an autosave feature. On a handheld in 1992, that's practically unheard of. If you die in battle, you'll restart right before that battle. Sure, it makes things a lot easier, and the game overall falls on the easy side, but I ain't complaining. I also never needed to grind, except when I wanted cash for better equipment, and the difficulty felt just right all the way through. Some enemies have devastating attacks that can one-shot your characters, but the RNG usually plays nice, keeping these to a minimum, and there's plenty of chances to heal up and avoid too much trouble if you're smart about item use and MP management. There's a cool innovation in how poison works as well. When a character gets poisoned, the poison gets worse every turn, and they'll die after a seemingly random number of turns, no matter how much HP they've got left. I'd never seen the poison status handled that way before, and it keeps you on your toes. Luckily, the genie gets a poison heal spell early on, and you can buy items to remove poison, so it's not a big deal. Enough about gameplay though, I've barely touched on what Defenders of Oasis is. Well, it's a traditional turn-based JRPG developed by none other than Sega. You play as the prince of one kingdom, who needs to save the princess of another kingdom, which eventually turns into a quest to save the world from a great evil. It's standard JRPG fare, and ultimately forgettable, but the gorgeous visuals and monster designs make up for it, and they're all in color. I'm sure players in the early 90s didn't appreciate the Game Gear's short battery life, but man, this looks way better than anything on the Game Boy. Party members are well fleshed out for a title from this era too. Besides the prince, you've got Agmar the thief, who joins after you rescue him from a dungeon filled with traps. He ain't the smartest, but he becomes a powerhouse of an attacker by the endgame, and there's also Salim, a ship captain's son with his own tragic story, who's got a crucial multi-target dance attack that makes early game battles less of a slog. And then there's the genie, who joins early and mainly acts as a support unit. He doesn't get any good attacking spells until halfway through, and his physical attack is hot garbage, but he's got second to none healing and high speed to go along. I find it fascinating that he does not level up like your other units though. Instead, he borrows a mechanic straight out of the early Saga games where you've got to find or buy items to use on him which raise his stats. Y'all may know how much I love Saga, and it's super cool how the game tries something like this in what's otherwise a very traditional JRPG, acting as a way to prevent a Jin character from being too powerful. By the late game, Genie can't take many hits unless you've grinded for stat boosts and items, which is totally unnecessary, but his healing remains vital, and managing his MP is all but required if you don't want to keep backtracking to towns to heal up. Defenders of Oasis ain't flawless though. For one, like most old RPGs, figuring out how to progress can be obtuse. Fortunately, for much of the game I had no trouble. Like usual with this sort of adventure, if you talk to everyone in town after every story event, you'll be fine, but there's a few instances where you've gotta talk to one person, which unlocks a dialogue trigger with another person, and I had to reach for a walkthrough to figure those out. Also, there's one weird instance where you have to go through a dungeon you just beat that feels like needless padding. The enemy encounter rate is very high, something I don't mind too much, but the game is so easy that it gets old after a while, even though the adventure's only around 15 hours long. I would have appreciated fewer battles with more XP per battle. The music is pleasing, but not much more than that. I certainly don't remember any of the tracks, but I enjoyed it well enough, and appreciate the Arabian flair since that's fairly uncommon for the genre. That goes for the game's setting too. I'd love to see more games take inspiration from Persia and other Middle Eastern locales. Finally, while enemy designs are appropriately grotesque and highly detailed with all kinds of mythological influences, take a look at this nasty thing for example. There's a ton of palette swaps, and the final dungeon doesn't feature any new sprites aside from the bosses. There's one dude, Al-Karia, or Al-Karia, who constantly thwarts the party throughout their quest, but when you fight him for the last time, he's just a palette swap of that Echidna enemy I showed you. What's up with that? The second to last boss too looks pretty stupid, a shame since he's tougher than the actual final boss. But these are minor complaints, and the variety of monsters and their cool factor is impressive. In fact, that's how I'd describe the game overall. Defenders of Oasis impress the hell out of me. It's a no-nonsense, all-fun romp that makes me want to check out more Game Gear RPGs. Crystal Warriors next? You'll have to wait and find out. Thanks for watching. Leave a like for that algorithm, subscribe for weekly videos on all sorts of RPGs, let me know in the comments if you've played Defenders of Oasis, and have a blessed day.